Thank you.
All right, shall I go, Janet?
Yes, please.
All right, this meeting is being called to order. Let's do introductions. I'm just gonna go from the, let's see. Why don't I just do, I'm a little out of practice here. City of Rohnert Park.
Yeah, Jeff Beiswinger, I am here.
Hey, Jeff, good morning. Katati.
Morning, everyone. It's Noah, City Katati.
Hey, Noah. Windsor. Don't see Emmanuel. Cloverdale.
Hi, Kevin and Rafael are both. Thank you.
Good morning. Hi, it's Rafael.
Rafael. Healdsburg. Okay, Sebastopol. City of Santa Rosa. Let's see, Amy.
Hi, good morning. Amy Nicholson, and I'm driving right now, but I'll be on video soon. Thanks.
Right. And City of Sonoma.
Good morning, everybody. Happy holidays. This is David.
Thanks, Dave. Okay, let's see. Smart Train.
Hi, Emily Betts with Smart.
And MTCA bag.
Hello, Ada Chan here.
Right. Caltrans.
Hi, this is Orlando with Caltrans.
Orlando for joining, and SCTA staff and RCPA staff.
Good morning, this is Tanya with RCPA.
This is BC Caps with RCPA.
Janet with SCTA.
Dana Trey with SCTA.
Chris Barney, SCTA.
Drew Nichols, SCTA.
And it looks like we have Windsor now too.
Kim Jordan with the Town of Windsor.
Kim, good morning. And we have tools, so maybe that's for presentation later.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and I'm Brian O with County of Sonoma. Okay, let's
Looks
see.
like we have some guests in the room.
Sure. You want to do introductions for them?
Steve, just say hi.
Hi, Steve Hurtlbaum with the Transportation Land Use Coalition.
Nice to see you.
Steve.
Hi, I'm Quinn Kelly with Tool Design.
Terrific.
And it looks like Carrie's joining us. Sebastopol.
Here.
All right. Approval of the agenda. Any changes or additional discussion items? Let's see. The agenda pulled up. Janet, do we have to just make a motion? Is that? Yeah. I can just make the motion, right?
Yeah.
I'll second it.
All right. Thanks, Dave. Okay. And then review the meeting notes from October 21. Are we good with the meeting notes?
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Thanks, Carrie. Okay, and then the next item up is the Vision Zero Action Plan. We'll have a presentation and then followed by a discussion.
Thanks, Brian. So this is the SCTA has the part of the Vision Zero project. We have the action plan, and we've hired Quinn Kelly of Tool Design and others at Tool to get us through this last stretch of the action plan. And any of you who are on the Vision Zero Advisory Committee heard an earlier version of this. And if you haven't, we're very glad you're here because we want to get the word out about Vision Zero. With that, I'll turn it over to Quinn.
Great, thank you, Janet. Yeah, so like Janet said, we sort of got plugged into this project about a month and a half ago and really hit the ground running. We've been starting with the outline that was created by the advisory committee and have been sort of, trying to plug that in, make that mesh with, what we know from the crash data and, talking to folks in Sonoma County and trying to figure out what, meld local context with best practices. So yeah, I'm excited to present. Today, we're basically presenting a high-level overview of some of our key goals and actions that we're proposing as part of this plan. This was also, as Janet said, presented at the advisory committee, and we got some really good feedback that's been integrated into some of these. I'll go ahead and share. Okay, share screen. Screen 1, no, screen 2. And present. Okay, are y'all seeing that? Okay, great.
Yes.
So yeah, this is sort of our project timeline. So I should say also we have some great help from the Department of Health Services has another consultant on board who's been doing a lot of great engagement work. They just wrapped up a big survey effort with like 2,500 respondents. And so we've got a lot of good community feedback that we're sort of still working on sifting through and analyzing right now. And then the other thing that we've sort of wrapped up at this point, more or less, is this goals and actions matrix, which is what we're more or less presenting to you all today. That being said, we're still in early phases of this, so there's plenty of room for incorporating any feedback that you have, and we are eagerly anticipating some more local perspective on some of these. So moving into the rest of this month, we're gonna be wrapping up the draft action plan, which is gonna be shared at the end of the year. And then in January, we're gonna have, MIG is gonna be doing some focus groups, and we're going to be running a virtual public workshop, which is scheduled for January 25th. And then we're gonna be wrapping up the final Vision Zero action plan at the end of February of next year. So things are moving at lightning speed, and we're excited to be putting this plan together. So we are relying on people like you who have the local on the ground expertise to sort of get a gut check on all these things we're proposing, and get your perspective on challenges and opportunities. So let's just jump right into it. So as part of this plan, we have 6 sort of high level goals, and those are sort of responding directly to what we heard from the outline that was prepared by the VZAC, as well as the crash data that we've seen from the, basically aggregated and reported through the Vision Zero data dashboard. So one of the major causes of injuries and fatalities in Sonoma County is speeds, which increase both the likelihood of a crash as well as the risk of that crash will result in a severe injury or a death. And it's important to note that this is not just about people exceeding the speed limit. This is also about making sure that roads are designed and signed at speeds that are appropriate to the users and the context. Jump right into that. So one of our key proposed actions here is reviewing speeds and posted limits on the county's high injury network, and then implementing speed mitigation measures based on the findings. This is about making sure that every road is signed for the right speed given the context, and then making sure that it's designed to actually encourage drivers to travel that speed. And there's a lot of sort of mitigation measures that can be retrofitted onto roads, to help calm traffic. And we're sort of proposing that any streets with substantial volumes of pedestrians and bikes should probably have a speed limit no greater than 25. Another action would be developing and adopting a process to reduce speed limits below 25. So sometimes in certain contexts it's appropriate to have even lower speed limits, like adjacent to schools, parks, senior centers, transit stations. And there's a law that just went through the state legislature that's going to be going into effect in a couple of years that gives local jurisdictions the authority to do this. So another huge crash factor in Sonoma County is impaired driving. And so we've been thinking about, how do we eliminate that? And I think it's really about creating transportation alternatives for people who are consuming alcohol, and also preventing those with a pattern of impaired driving from getting behind the wheel, and also sort of trying to address the root causes of alcohol and drug abuse. So a couple actions that we're proposing here. I should say our complete sort of goals and actions matrix was distributed as part of the agenda packet. I'm just presenting a couple of key ones that we're particularly excited to get some feedback on. So yeah, encouraging safe wine, beer, and cannabis tourism by promoting rideshare services, designated driver services, and tours on bike and foot. And then continuing to expand police engagement with businesses around responsible beverage service. So yeah, I'll keep going through here, and then I'm happy to go back to any of these in our discussion. So the next high level goal is sort of a little more broad about creating a culture of safety. And many of the elements included in VSAC's original outline sort of fall into this goal, which is really about instilling a sense of shared responsibility for each other's safety as road users. This is a goal that really involves a really huge group of stakeholders, people who are really plugged into local communities. So a couple actions from here: developing comprehensive engagement strategies that prioritize equity priority communities and create personal connections to Vision Zero. And another thing that we'd proposed is expanding existing Safe Routes to School programs into permanent safe bicycle training curriculum for all Sonoma public schools. This is a big one. Obviously, a big part of Vision Zero is about designing streets so that you're reducing conflicts between road users, and also trying to make sure that whenever people do make mistakes, it doesn't result in a fatality or a severe injury. So there's dozens of sort of engineering countermeasures that have been proven to reduce the quantity and severity of crashes, ranging from simple things like adding reflective materials to utility poles, all the way to raised crosswalks or traffic circles. So a few actions we wanted to highlight from here is establishing a multidisciplinary rapid response team to evaluate and address fatal and severe injury crashes. Creating a dedicated funding stream for projects designed to meet Vision Zero safety goals, again, prioritized in equity priority communities. Adopting guidelines for the installation of marked pedestrian and bicycle crossings, including crossing enhancements based on vehicle speeds, volumes, street characteristics, transit stops, and other factors. I think we want to note that this doesn't necessarily mean creating something brand new, but there's some really good FHWA guidance that's come out recently that can be sort of crafted into a pretty simple and straightforward local policies that help make sure that it's safe for people to cross in a variety of street contexts. And then research and consider reinstating automated traffic enforcement as a strategy to reduce red light running. Obviously, speed cameras are also great, but not super politically feasible in California right now. So finally, I think, two more. So making vehicles safer. So this is about, simple retrofits and also sort of procurement practices to make sure that, to reduce the risk of death and severe injury between like fleet vehicles in particular, larger vehicles with pedestrians and cyclists. So a couple of goals here: installing side guards on large county-owned fleet. It's a really simple retrofit that just basically helps prevent pedestrians and cyclists from being killed by large trucks. And then advocating for an automated mobility framework that advances Vision Zero safety goals. This one's really about looking at what's coming down the pike in terms of autonomous vehicles, other sorts of automated mobility, and making sure that that's rolled out in a way that prioritizes safety for all road users. And then our final sort of broad goal: improving data for effective decision making. Sonoma County has already taken a huge step toward improving data with the Vision Zero data dashboard. And so we're sort of looking at ways to take that further to improve the quality of data and get it into the hands of decision makers. So one action proposed is using Portrait of Sonoma County Hospital Trauma and Health Center data to identify underlying elements related to safety and mobility, and also understanding, potentially how crashes, to what degree crashes might be underreported, so we can help get a fuller picture of crashes in the county. And then developing and delivering a training module for law enforcement officers to help standardize and make crash reporting more thorough and detailed. So thank you. I know that was a whirlwind, but I know we didn't have too much time on the agenda, so I wanted to get through it all. And so, I would love to, if anyone wants to discuss any of those particular actions or anything else that I didn't mention. Janet, I don't know how much time we have now, but I would love to hear some feedback. And if not, I put my email here so folks can send feedback that way as well.
As Quinn mentioned, this is a big lift for us at this point, and we are heading to a deadline, in the next couple of months. So we really look forward to your questions. Jeff, I think you had your hand up first.
Yeah, I was just going to make a suggestion. I know in past planning conferences, and I'm sure other people have seen these as well, there's this correlation between speed and how injured pedestrians get, basically, and kind of a rate of death. And so you might want to kind of, maybe going back to the whole blood on the asphalt things that I used to watch in grade school, to keep people from not drunk driving. That, I mean, it might be good just to put in some of that stuff at the beginning so that you have, because you're talking a lot about speed limits and, why do you need to have people drive slower around schools, or why do you need to have people drive 25 miles per hour? You don't really make that link.
Well, I should say this is not the plan. These are just the actions. The plan includes, most of the bulk of the plan is actually looking at the data and looking at, the rationale behind all of these types of things.
Yeah, I think because this is a little, I just thought this was a little too sanitized. I just think maybe you could put in a little bit of that stuff up front so there's a link between why do you want to slow people down and why is that important?
Yeah, that's the bulk of, the draft plan that we're going to be sharing at the end of the year. The bulk of the plan is what you're talking about. This is sort of just the proposed actions.
Okay. That's all I got.
Thank you.
No.
Hi there. Yeah, so we just Tuesday at City Council talked about the local roadway safety plan, and so just highlight that, make sure these things I think dovetail perfectly, and so I'm sure you guys are aware of it, but I haven't been involved directly in Vision Zero or our LRSP. Our senior planner's been doing that, but he wasn't able to attend today, so I just want to highlight that, and any place where we can be aware of both of them and they can be in alignment, I think would be helpful. And then we're internally doing our bicycles and pedestrian master plan, and we're going to use a lot of the data that came out of both of these to feed into that. So just know that, and Janet, I think JP will be reaching out to you guys to try to get as much help as we can get, trying to get that done internally. But two things that came up at the council discussion. One, just figuring out ways to get kind of retrofit traffic calming onto existing streets where we know speeds are a problem. So as you guys look to funding opportunities or maybe create individual grants, that would be hugely helpful to be able to target those, because we had a broader discussion with the Public Works Department, and we're looking at our CIP and just really being able to prioritize specific traffic calming projects, I think would be helpful from a funding perspective, especially on existing roads. And East Sierra in Cotati is a perfect example of that. The street runs right by City Hall and the police station. There's a stop sign at an intersection. People literally blow it every day because it accesses there's an on-ramp and an off-ramp right there. And so I think people are either, getting the freeway mentality either into their mind or out of their mind. And so that's a big, important road for us that we always hear about when we have these conversations. And then the last thing that came up as a part of it was the ability for us to reduced speed limits. And so if you could just talk about the law. I'm sorry, I was trying to look it up again because we it's like a perpetual cycle where, you know, people drive faster and then we have to bump up the speed limit. And that's the problem on West Sierra, because we always bring that up and the police department's like, we legally can't.
Yeah, I'm super glad you brought that up. So yeah, the bill that just went through the legislature is called AB 43. But you know, I also think it's not just about, you know, being able to go under 25. It's also just having alternatives to the 85th percentile methodology for setting speed limits. And there are other alternative methodologies that have been fully endorsed by the FHWA. So I think, yeah, a big part of this is, yeah, sort of thinking about, yeah, what other methodologies could be adopted as sort of standard, at least in certain contexts, that would, yeah, result in more sort of context appropriate speeds. So.
And so just to add to that, I think an education campaign on that would be a huge help, because it's just, you know, we're not used to having other alternatives. And so if you could just give us the toolkit, then the folks who are doing this work can start to look at options and try to get some results.
Great. That's great feedback, Noah. Thanks.
Brian?
Thanks, Quinn. Janet, this might actually be a question for SCTA, but just on background, are we, or on process, is the idea that the action plan gets approved by the SCTA board, and then are there local actions that are being expected of our respective jurisdictions? Or maybe this already happened, that predates my time?
This is a very good question. SCTA only recently got involved in this project, which has been with Department of Health Services for a couple of years now, and DHS was very much sidelined by COVID. So the process part probably has shifted more toward us a little bit, especially with this action plan. Our board will definitely see this report and approve it, but the initial ideas about it were that every single jurisdiction would have the opportunity to take it to their councils or board to adopt it or signal that they approve of the measures. We still haven't worked out exactly what we're asking for there, but we'll let you know. Do you think the Board of Supervisors would be amenable to this?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they've, you know, maybe passed a prior resolution. I'm just thinking back to previous work in other jurisdictions where it's usually like an initial resolution or some adoption. Like for City of Los Angeles, we got the action plan adopted by the city council. So I was just thinking through like how we should be preparing our leadership for the conversation, especially if it's going to be going to the board.
Yeah, this
and
is, yeah.
Seems like a lot of the work, the implementation ends up falling on the local, like public works staff and, you know, et cetera. So just, you know, I'd want to make sure, I'm assuming sort of the TAC where our counterpart sits has been engaged, but, you know, it's not, you know, definitely happy to connect with TPW.
Excellent points. Yes, we're very interested in all the connections that we can make to the folks that will be implementing this, get their buy-in, get their interest in Vision Zero connected to this plan and moving forward.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. I think, yeah, part of where we are right now also is like, you know, we're taking inventory of who we've already engaged with through, you know, the VSAC and the TAC and this committee, and then trying to figure out, you know, who are the missing voices that we need to make special efforts to speak with. So.
Thank you, Brian. Steve, do you have a question?
Yes, just I wanted to be sure that they are involved with the local coastal plan, which is now being developed, and there are some significant safety issues on Highway 1 which may be illustrative of how this should be approached.
Good point. Thank you. Quinn, did you have any additional questions for the group, or would you like to talk about deadlines? Or
Yeah, I put it up here. I mean, this process is ongoing. So it's not like if you don't get your feedback by tomorrow, and it's not going to be incorporated, but I would love to get feedback by tomorrow, just because we are going to be wrapping up the draft version of the plan in the next week or so. So it'd be great to be able to get your feedback incorporated into that draft rather than having to wait for the final plan. So if you could share any comments in the next couple of days, that would be awesome.
and that draft will be reviewed by the VZAC. Why don't you give out the next steps?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So that draft, yeah, like Janice said, will be reviewed by the VZAC. And then, you know, we're going to take that feedback in addition to what we're hearing through the stakeholder interviews and the focus groups and the public workshop. And then we're going to bundle that all into the final Vision Zero action plan, which is, again, we'll be wrapping up at the end of February.
Great, thank you. I guess that's it for Vision Zero. Thank you, Brian.
Right. Okay. All right. Looks like maybe is it Chris for agenda item number 4?
Yeah, that's the VMT reduction calculator.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's where we're at, right, Brian? Yep. Okay, great. Yeah, I just wanted to give a brief update on where we're at with the VMT reduction calculator tool. So I know many of you were at the kickoff meeting that we held on December 2nd with Fair and Peers. So we had a good turnout for that meeting, and we walked through kind of some basics on VMT and SB 743, and Fair and Peers were able to outline their approach for developing the VMT reduction calculator. And just to distill that down, I don't want to go in depth through what was covered at that meeting. We do have recordings, and I attached the slide deck from that meeting if you'd like more information. But just to give a really high level review of what's going on, we're starting from a basis of the Sandag or Alameda VMT calculator tool. So it's a spreadsheet based tool that you can actually plug in a project location and VMT and select different mitigation measures and get a percentage reduction for those different VMT reduction measures. So the plan right now is to start reviewing those two tools. Fair and Peers was able to provide a demo of the Alameda version of that tool at the kickoff meeting. On the Alameda website, there's also a video that kind of walks through how that works. And they have pretty robust documentation on the different VMT reduction measures included in their tool, and also a link to the Sandag tool as well. So I can actually drop a link to that in the chat. So right now we're collecting feedback on that information. We're also assembling a steering committee for the project. So I know many of you have already volunteered to help out with that. So we're working on scheduling the first meeting of the steering committee in February. And the task there is to really dig into the mitigation measures and make sure we're including locally appropriate measures. So just to give kind of a look at what's included in the Alameda tool, maybe I'll share my screen really quick and just show a few of the slides that we looked at. So here's just a quick look at where we're starting from as far as VMT reduction measures. There are different subdivisions of different types of strategies: commute programs, land use strategies and changes, parking approaches, enhancements to the neighborhoods, and then transit approaches. And one thing to note is all of these really need to be backed up with substantial evidence. So a big part of this project is not only identifying the mitigation measures, but backing it up with lots of data and research. So it's, defensible in the courts. So, so that's where we're at right now. Working with Fair and Peers to pull a lot of data from the travel model that'll be used in the tool and start gathering feedback on the mitigation measures. So happy to answer any questions, but right now kind of the next step is, getting any feedback to that initial kickoff meeting and then digging into the mitigation measures in February with that steering committee. So if you're interested in participating in that and haven't already let me know, go ahead and let me know. Happy to get you on the list and we'll start scheduling that in the next couple of weeks. So with that, happy to answer any questions. And I just dropped the link to the Alameda tool documentation in the chat as well. So there's a good link to their documentation that has a pretty robust list of the mitigation measures and background research in the tool right now.
Chris, I just wanted to thank you for your work on this. I think this is going to be a great tool for all of the jurisdictions. So I look forward to seeing it kind of further refine and be something we can all be tapping into.
Great. Yeah, thanks. And, I would just say that the Alameda tool has been kind of distilled down. They've added quite a few things and made some adjustments. So we have the opportunity to do that here as well and make sure we're including things that are appropriate to your jurisdictions in Sonoma County as well. So yeah, thanks for your participation as well.
And has everybody, do you have a full, well, I forget what you call them, technical advisory committee or whatever you're calling them, steering committee? Do you have a full complement to be on that?
We have about half the jurisdictions involved right now. Yeah, Olivia is
right.
We have
great.
her on there.
Okay.
So,
Excellent. Thank you.
Yep.
Chris, do you know when Alameda rolled out their tool, did they pair it with any sort of community education or outreach just around the use of it?
That's a good question. I can find out more about that. I know that's part of our scope with Fair and Peers, and we've talked about that a little bit. Possibly convening a workshop with consultants and engineers that are preparing traffic studies and maybe some folks from the development community to kind of talk about feasibility. So I'm meeting with Fair and Peers tomorrow, so I'll get more information about that and can reach out to our contacts at Alameda CTC as well and see how much research. But yeah, that's definitely something we'd like to do as part of this project.
All right, thank you, Chris. Next up on the agenda, item number 5, RCPA Sonoma Climate Mobilization Strategy Policy Priority for 2022. Oh, that's a mouthful.
Excellent. Thank you, Brian. This is BC Caps with RCPA. And before I get started, Tanya, is there anything you would like to kind of say in preamble, or I can just jump in?
No, jump right in. Thank you.
Okay, very good. So thanks for having me participate today. This is a follow-up to a presentation that that Tanya and I came and a discussion we helped lead in October on potential policy priorities for implementation of our Sonoma Climate Mobilization Strategy through next year. And we, so this strategy document was adopted by our board in March of 2021. And then we have spent the last 9 months or so, we had got an initial list of priorities that were adopted by our board. And Tanya and I have been kind of working across the board on a number of different items throughout the last few months. One item that jumped to the front of the list throughout the course of the last few months was work that we've been doing on the construction or on a proposed ban on construction of new gas stations, and we're continuing on in that work. But the way that that was kind of played out in very rapid fashion and came to the forefront, it raised the question, or it just raised the request that came through multiple channels of would it be possible for us at RCPA to identify the kind of our policy priorities, kind of our projects that we'd like to be working on over the course of the next 12 months and take that through just a little bit more of a deliberative process. So back here today to present 6 proposed actions that Tanya and I are hoping to work on throughout the course of next year. Want to get some feedback from everyone on this call. A lot of the work ends up having to do it will be kind of led by us or coordinated by us here at RCPA, but the work is really, it goes back to working with the individual jurisdictions and the individual municipalities. So we really wanted to make sure that we kind of got the input ahead of time. Our plan at this point is we'll have a discussion today. Based upon the feedback, I will be amending these policy proposals. We will be taking this to our Climate Action Advisory Committee in early January, and then hopefully to our full board for their approval at the February meeting in early February. So let me share screen. I have these. See if I can find this. Okay. Is the group able to see that slide? Great. Okay. So I wanted to walk through this kind of quickly of what we have in mind for our work over the next few months, and then I wanted to open it up and get some kind of input and feedback on all of this. So we have the mobilization strategy is really organized into 6 different initiative areas. And so we have kind of identified, I should say, in addition to the things that have already been prioritized and that we are continuing to work on, we'd like to bring 6 more things into the fold for this upcoming year. And I'll walk through these quickly. First, within kind of decarbonization of buildings and thinking about building energy. Very interested in working on looking at the energy reach code related ordinances that could be adopted by jurisdictions as part of the new California building code that is the triennial update that was being approved this year or being approved in 2022 for implementation in 2023. There are a number of jurisdictions that already have, or there's several jurisdictions that already have energy reach codes of some sort. There may be others that would be interested in implementing reach codes. And even the ones that do have existing reach codes under this code cycle, those will need to be reauthorized and adopted in January of 2023, before January of 2023 for those to remain in effect. So, and let's see, I see a hand come up and I can either, depending upon whether you wanted to add in right now, Heather, or whether I should continue rolling through, depending upon how, what you've got.
I just have a very quick question about the reach codes, and I'm afraid if I wait, I'll forget.
Please.
Do you have a sense of what reach codes those would be? And is it following what we anticipate to see come out with the new codes, the triennial updates, and then still what is outstanding? My understanding is with the next triennial code updates, there's going to be more all electric requirements. We're not sure. I don't know if we know exactly what it's going to look like, but so are the reach codes related to that you're thinking related to like increase EV charger requirements or increased solar requirements, or I'm just trying to get a sense of what you have targeted with this.
Very good, thanks. No, that's a very good clarifying question, thank you. Reach codes in general come up on this list twice. We're gonna talk about EV reach codes in just a minute. These are specific, here I'm specifically talking about reach codes that would be tied with standards for new construction and they would be directly with the kind of tied with the California Energy Code. And really it would be looking, it's really along that electrification of buildings and or what to do with natural gas hookups, restrictions on any natural gas hookups within new construction. And that's where I think the majority of the REACH code work has been done, the ones that are adopted. And what we're looking at is to identify what has evolved in this next edition of the code, which REACH codes, which portion of the existing REACH codes still apply and which have now been subsumed by that code, and where jurisdictions may want to then continue to go further. We could set up, a lot of this work would be coordinated with the BayREN, with the Bay Area Regional Energy Network and their codes and standards program, as well as the state level codes and standards program. But here I'm really talking about energy codes tied to the new construction around electrification.
Thank you.
Sure. And each jurisdiction needs to make their own decisions on what is appropriate for their community and what their councils would want to adopt. So I think our role would be to develop that portfolio, that catalog of options, and then to continue to kind of work with the planning staff at each jurisdiction to say, are you interested in moving this forward? And if so, what is most appropriate for your local town, so your local city or town. So that's kind of on the top, that's the kind of number one, kind of really that work around energy REACH codes. That having to do with new construction, the missing piece on that then that's not covered is on existing buildings. And so moving down to item number 2, I've been very interested in a building electrification strategy that has been released this past year by the city of Berkeley. A lot of jurisdictions are looking to that document as a guidebook for how to move forward on electrification of existing buildings. And so this proposal kind of number 2 is really using that strategy document and a number of other building electrification documents that are out there to try to develop a strategy document that could be applicable here to communities within Sonoma County. And again, we here at RCPA would be kind of working with at the regional and state level to pulling together information, trying to condense it down into a usable format, and then kind of passing those tools off to local jurisdictions for implementation or adoption at the local level. A lot of the work in both of these is actually also has to do with even developing sets of common definitions among jurisdictions. Even if 2 jurisdictions within the county want to take radically different approaches, having a common set of definitions that we can rely upon is something that has come up in the past, would be a beneficial improvement. So, excuse me. So kind of that's number 2, is really looking at strategies for decarbonization of existing buildings. Moving down into transportation and number 3 and number 4. Number 3 would be would be around looking at EV charging stations and REACH codes that may be applied, that jurisdictions could adopt, that would apply for EV REACH codes. And we put in the example here of kind of an EV ready REACH code. And the specific wording here is kind of based around charging apparatus or charging stations. I think that there is some flexibility in here as to that we could work with individual jurisdictions. Some installing EV chargers at public charging locations is a high priority for some. Installing at multifamily multifamily housing is a high priority for others. So this would be looking at, again, what's that portfolio of options, and then how do we support jurisdictions on adopting those locally. Number 4 is a catch-all, which as you may very well be aware, SCTA has adopted the has been working on and has just adopted our comprehensive transportation plan that will guide a number of SCTA activities for the upcoming years. Those activities, those measures and strategies that are identified in the comprehensive transportation plan have an incredible overlap with a number of much of the work we would like to do in the climate mobilization strategy. So it would be looking, this proposal number 4 would be really looking at the project list between those 2 And this would be focused around kind of building the synergies between RCPA staff and SCTA staff. We work very closely together here in the same office, but really trying to strengthen those bonds between us so that we can take on kind of any single project really kind of meets the needs of both sides of our organization. So that would be really working on kind of digging into the comprehensive transportation plan proposed measures. Number 5, we've also heard support from a number of local jurisdictions around work on urban tree canopy, urban forest conservation plans, tree protection ordinances. This is another one where, depending upon the size of the jurisdiction and or whether one is talking about the individual cities and towns or whether one is talking about the unincorporated county lands, there's kind of a wide variety of approaches that may be appropriate. And what we would look here to do is, again, to support any members that we're going to be working on urban forest conservation plans or tree protection ordinances and looking what are the standards that could be applied, and really trying to find some techniques and focus in on efforts that would really maximize carbon sequestration. There's been some analysis that's been done recently around tree planting programs. It's really looking at the balance of young saplings that are planted through tree urban forestry programs may not actually have as much, or those don't have the benefits we're looking for if we're still continuing to cut down our older trees that are kind of elsewhere in the community. So you'll be looking at issues around that and trying to kind of looking at the carbon sequestration potential of urban tree planting. Finally, this number 6 one is something that I've been chipping away at a little bit already. And this would be to work with the local jurisdictions that are either currently undertaking or would be undertaking an update to their general plan as a whole or specific elements. We are very interested in looking at how to integrate climate related impacts more into those documents. Most of the time this has to do with, most of the safety element of the general plan is a very common place where that climate work is being integrated. And this proposal would be to attempt to work with the planning departments of the jurisdictions that are undergoing these kind of general plan updates, and to determine what role that we could best play and how we could then bring in, there's a lot of regional and state resources that are available around this integration of different climate related topics into kind of general plan documents, and then those that are associated with general plans, either that they've been adopted by reference or through some other means. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I can bring this back up if we need to use it for reference. But in general, I'm really interested to hear from members of this group whether those proposals would be of value, whether there's, and I guess I'm looking for, are there things on this list that really resonate with you and you really think are good? And the next would be, is there anything on this list that's actually really shouldn't be on here at this point? We want to postpone, we want to take off or reconsider because there's some other extenuating circumstances. So with that, let me stop sharing my screen and I'll hand it back to Brian O to kind of lead us here in our discussion.
Thanks, BC.
And it's going to take me just a minute to figure out how to unshare. Here we go.
Well, while you're doing that, I'll call on Noah. He's got his hand up.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you, BC. I just want to first say, it seems to me that you really heard some of the input that we provided the last time you presented, and just really appreciate that. I agree with everything that you have on your list. And I had a couple just suggestions or maybe things to flesh it out. So one of the things that I've run into with electrification is just the current grid network by PG&E is only built to meet the existing capacity, right? So if we're all pushing to reach or electrification all at the same time, that has the potential to be a real issue. And so, you know, I've come across this in my own experience when I built an ADU at my house. They had to replace a transformer on my street because the capacity couldn't even handle one 500 square foot additional all electric unit. So that's just an interesting, like, I was surprised. I'm like, and I was talking to the guy and he said, we literally build in 0 capacity. We just add it as it's needed. Because I asked him, I'm like, oh, are you going to upsize it now that you're coming out here and having to design all this work? And they said no. So that was kind of enlightening to me and also a little bit shocking. But and then as we were talking about some of these development issues with some local architects, they were talking about the additional costs that can be put on developers having to upgrade the PG&E network for who knows how far to meet the demands of their projects, especially if they're all electric and there's a lot of basically push towards electrification. And this came up in our context of like, okay, how much EV charging capacity are we going to force on developers to construct as kind of like a ministerial requirement? And so just to me, getting some information on that would be super helpful and informative to our policies with regards to requiring electrification, requiring a certain amount of EV charging capacity provided for each type of development. So that to me would be super helpful, and even maybe a standardized amount of EV capacity for each type of project, single family versus multifamily versus commercial or industrial, might be an interesting thing to contemplate and have that be standardized across the county. So then our developers, kind of no matter where they go, all have the same expectations put on them. With your tree stuff, mitigation planting, just don't forget about that. And I know small trees do not sequester anywhere near the amount of mature trees, but all of us require, you know, a ratio. So 5 to 1, whatever the number is of kind of saplings to mature trees when you come in to cut the trees down. And our issue, as we've talked about last time, is we have no program to spend the fees that we collect in lieu of. And so that would be super helpful, because right now we have this money and we're like, well, where are we going to plant a tree? And the public works or parks department's like, oh, well, that's another thing we got to deal with, and maintenance, blah, blah, blah. Whereas I think a regional approach could identify good locations for our mitigation planting, even if it wasn't just in the individual communities. And then lastly, and I'm sorry, I have a lot of opinions. I think the general plan analysis on where we all are at with our greenhouse gas reduction strategies is super helpful. And one step further you could try to do is come up with some kind of off the shelf, consistent language that as we all step to update our general plans, we're likely to all create our own greenhouse gas chapters, or at least, you know, portions of chapters within that plan. And having some consistent off-the-shelf language that we're all working towards, I think would be a benefit to all of our communities and your guys' goals of, you know, regional GHG reduction, but then also all the developers who are involved with us and having to navigate the individual requirements in each of the jurisdictions.
Thank you. It's a very useful feedback. Thank you, Noah.
Heather?
Thank you. BC, what's the timeline when you're making this list of priorities? Is this your 2022? Is it your 5-year plan? What's the timeline on these items?
I think these would be our items for active work through the year 2022. Okay. I have not at this point set the milestone or our end goal of what we would want to reach at that point. But in general, I think these are the themes we would like to follow in the upcoming 12 months.
Okay. And the reason I ask is because many of these things are on Petaluma's list, but I've got they're like clawing down my door for me to get these things done. And so I'm like, I don't think I'm going to be able to wait for the regional approach on some of these things if we're talking about the end of 2022 or 2023, just because of the pressures in Petaluma to do some of this. So you know, I'm also happy if we are slightly out in front on one of these issues to, you know, to help when I can, although I know that some people think I made their lives miserable with the gas station ban. So apologies there. And then
I just would like to clarify really quick. It's not our intention that it will be the end of the year before you see any results on these.
Yeah.
Things.
Well, I just know that's an aggressive work plan.
Yeah,
So
sure.
I'm not faulting you at all. I'm just kind of, the elephant in my room is I sometimes the pressure to do it now. And one other thing that, and I don't know if other jurisdictions are talking about this, but because Petaluma adopted a pretty aggressive all electric for new construction and significant additions and alterations, we're now kind of moving on to how do we electrify the existing building stock. And so that's a huge thing we're working on. I don't know if other jurisdictions are diving into that because I know Santa Rosa has their all electric. I think Windsor retracted their all electric for new construction. So I don't know exactly what I'm saying or asking for, but this is just like what we're talking about in Petaluma and looking for ways to incentivize as opposed to just regulations about all electric. Things like, you know, when someone's hot water heater breaks, they're not spending a bunch of time researching. They're calling someone from Google and saying, you know, help, I don't have hot water. How quickly and cheaply can you get and replace this? And so we have to find ways to kind of like get in that stream to incentivize, educate, financial incentives, maybe bulk buying across, you know, different jurisdictions to say, hey, actually, if you do all electric, we can waive permit fees, or we can, you know, we happen to have 100 heat pump water heaters that we bought as a region, and, you know, creating, you know, graphic, Sierra Club did this thing where they created these graphic kind of like, why go electric, you know, and it's really kind of more accessible and fun. It's not reading through code or reading through GHG inventory where most people's, you know, heads start spinning, but it's ways to reach the homeowner. It's ways to, you know, maybe, you know, bag lunch seminars where we bring in the water heater, the plumbing contractors to get them on board, why they should go electric and how we can help them. So it's less of a regulatory approach, but it seems like some of these things there might be a benefit to working as the region and all the jurisdictions to combine. Because a lot of it, if I'm going to do a graphic info thing for City of Petaluma's website, NOAA should be using it for Cotati. You know, it crosses jurisdictional boundaries. So that's just another related but different piece of this.
Very good. Thank you. Again, very, very helpful comments for me.
Hey, Jeff, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I was just going to add, Heather said some of the information I was going to say just regarding with new home construction. I think they're already moving towards not really wanting to, I mean, this may be an overstatement, but they're almost looking for an excuse to not do gas because they have to put in that infrastructure. Somo, we already know that they're not even going to even try to put in gas system. They're going to go all electric from the beginning. I think our other large projects have already started putting in gas, so they have kind of momentum behind that. But I really don't think it's going to be hard to tell home builders for new homes to not put in gas infrastructure. But where the real challenge is getting the older homes to retrofit, or older businesses to retrofit. I think that is going to be the biggest challenge. And And maybe there ought to be a little bit more separation in some of these documents to talk about those as kind of two separate issues. Anyway, I think that was my main point. And Noah, we'll plant all the trees you want over here. So if you just want to give us that money, we'll be fine with that. So anyway, that's it.
Yeah.
I see, well, Tanya had to jump off for another meeting, but she did put a note in the chat to remind me kind of for the request of if there's no other general comments, it would be great to hear what would be, of these 6, are there 1 or 2 that jump out as the highest priorities or the lowest priorities for us to hit the ground running as of, even though we are taking this through the process of going through our advisory meetings, we are chipping away on this stuff and working on this stuff actively now. So are there any of these 6, is there 1 or 2 that are the highest priorities for any individuals? That'd be helpful to hear.
I would say just for me, making sure the reach code information is available, probably by mid-year when we're going to start looking at our ordinances and what the state's going to be requiring for the updates. And again, what we talked about before is we want to make sure that we understand fully what the state stuff's going to be, so we can understand where anything else that we're going to do is going to be diverging from that, and we don't want to be redundant in our efforts.
And then for County of Sonoma's perspective, I think 5 and 6, I mean, those are just items that we're either in the process, we're taking a tree ordinance update to our board in Q2 of next year. And then we'll start, actually in that same quarter, we'll start scoping general plan with the board. And then I'll probably have to check in on the other ones just to see on the building side if there's what sort of interest, but definitely for starters, 5 and 6 for me.
I think for the city of Santa Rosa, I agree 5 and 6 would be really helpful. We've had an update to our tree protection ordinance on our parking lot list for probably 5 years. And there's definitely an interest in carbon sequestration. So and then we're working on our general plan update right now. So yeah, 6 would be super helpful. And I imagine number 1 as well for our building staff. I'm just not as involved in that piece. So thank you so much.
I think for Petaluma, we are undergoing we're in the midst of our general plan update right now. We are also working on a tree preservation ordinance right now. So I think those are both kind of moving quickly. In terms of reach codes, I'm interested, and I think Petaluma is interested in doing everything we can, just because we already have a requirement for no natural gas, all electric for new construction and significant remodels. I'm not sure, it kind of depends on where those reach codes are, but I'm not sure. It seems like we've already kind of got what you would be covering with reach codes. EV is one that we're kind of constantly struggling with because our council and decision makers want us to require more than like is required in the building code. But we're told that, we can't do that. So it's constantly like kind of just twisting a developer's arm to get them to commit to more than is required by building requirements. But we're also both for residential and for commercial, and kind of related to that. And I don't know how many of the jurisdictions do this, but we're undertaking a study session about parking regulations to look at eliminating minimum parking requirements and creating maximum parking requirements, and doing some of the additional things like potentially requiring unbundling and, you know, some of those other strategies related to parking regulations. So EV, I'm sure will come up with that, but my understanding from our city attorney is we can't just like add that to our zoning code requirements. It has to go through, since it's covered in the building code, we have to do it that way through a reach code. So that's something that I think we have a lot of interest in.
Very good. Thank you, Heather. I don't see any other hands up. So Brian, I'd like to hand it back to you. This has been very, very helpful. And I want to thank everybody for kind of the input and the feedback on this.
Thanks, PC. All right, next. Let's see. Janet, should we do public comment, or can we just go straight to standing updates?
Isn't public comment on the agenda at the end? Do I not have it here?
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm. Okay, then let's go to standing updates. 6A, updates from the members. Let's see who's left. Why don't we go to Windsor? Kim?
So the town council did direct staff to bring forward the gas station ban, which we are wrapping into our zoning ordinance update. We will be posting a draft climate adaptation plan for public review on Friday with the intent to have the town council adopt in January. And that's all I can think of at the moment. We are working on our draft VMT policy guidelines. And then we've just learned that there's going to be new policy direction from BACMed on the GHG thresholds, which may push back the VMT work. So I know we're trying to figure out what those deadlines are. Apparently, if the town adopts its own thresholds before BACMed adopts theirs, then the town's thresholds will apply. Anyway, so we're still working on that. That's kind of a new thing that popped up on our list. Thank you.
Thanks, Kim. All right. Any other volunteers to go next?
I'll go for Sebastopol. I'll keep it brief. We do have a gas station ban going to our planning commission in January, second meeting in January, I think. We have our Civic Spark fellow working on the climate action framework, and she has her work plan all worked out, presented to council, and we'll be starting that outreach for that in January as well. That goes through August of next year, and working with Tanya and RCPA on that as well. We have a 10-unit mini townhome going to council for approval in January, so busy January. And then, as most of you probably saw in the paper, our council just approved a safe parking village for RVs. We're working on getting their site plan settled out, so they are looking at moving in folks off of Morris Street in mid-January as well. And then we are working on about to issue an RFP to the technical bench for ABAG for objective design standards. So I'm really curious to hear how David's city council meeting went last night. And moving along on all of our other SB2 funding projects like electronic permitting and the like. And I think I'll just leave it there.
I'll jump in. Let's see, I mentioned in Petaluma that we're doing our general plan update and really digging into evaluating our site inventory from the 5th cycle. We are moving forward. We are adopting a visitability ordinance which has some requirements for basic accessibility requirements on ground floor of residential, so that at the minimum, somebody could come visit, and the widths of hallways and doorways, and having some of the kind of blocks built into the wall so you can put the handrails and grab bars and stuff up. We're working on a tree preservation ordinance that has become a very significant issue more recently in Petaluma. I keep hearing that Windsor has a great ordinance that was modeled after Palo Alto. I see Kim kind of looking at me quizzically, but
We need an update too. We'd be very interested in the
interesting.
SCTA. I think ours is very similar to Petaluma.
Oh, interesting, because we just had this presentation by our tree advisory committee saying how wonderful Windsor's was. So I haven't pulled it up, but so that's another thing we are working on. We're starting new flood modeling, 2D flood modeling, and we're trying to figure out how to do that and overlay tidal information and sea level rise information, because one of the things that is of concern in Petaluma is our flood modeling in the past and our FEMA maps aren't the whole story. And so since we're going through an updated flood modeling, let's figure out how to overlay the sea level rise and the tidal influences, so we have a better picture of what the true conditions are. So we are trying to get our sea level rise consultant with our general plan and our flood modeling consultant talking and try to figure that out. What else are we working on? I guess that right now that's what's coming to top of mind. We're really excited. Our mid-pin project, which is 44 low-income units on the Boulevard North, looks like they are hopefully breaking ground in February of 2022, and our 50 some odd senior veterans low-income PEP housing project is moving along. We are waiting to hear in January whether we will get funding from the Affordable Housing Sustainable Communities grant funding that we partnered with Danco Communities and SMART for 131 unit lower income project, where our second station at Corona and McDowell would go, and that would include I think it's 33 permanent supportive housing. So fingers crossed with that. And we are also waiting to hear on some grant funds for Project Home Key to create permanent supportive housing units associated with that as well. And we are also working on an expansion of the Mary Isaac Center, which is our homeless shelter, to add, I think it's something around 30 units of tiny homes outside, to kind of support the non-congregate living environment, as well as meeting some of the needs of people who don't stay in the congregate shelter there, and then just expanding availability. So those are the highlights.
Looks like Dave wanted to go.
Oh, I'll go. Yeah. I just can't stand it waiting for 5:15 tonight when APAC Executive Board has some fun. Ada, how can you stand that? Anyway, so we should get our new arena tonight, all things being equal. This is the final stop, right, Ada? Oh, great. And we'll have 311, which is up from 137. And thank you, Governor Newsom, for that. Last night, Brian, our city council had a discussion about the CDC, and thank you for having your staff and Jimmy there. And I don't know if I said his name right, but they received some feedback and comment. And I think from what I heard, the city council or city manager is going to write a letter just expressing some issues that should be considered by the board when they meet on the 25th of January, I think. So I'm not quite sure when that's going to happen. There will be a city council meeting on the 19th, Brian, where they look at the letter and see if the letter that the managers crafted at the behest of the council is what they really want to say to the county. So your staff mentioned that would be adequate time to help put that into your staff presentation for the board. January 25th, our community is going to have a housing element kickoff meeting. That's really more of a rah-rah thing. We've actually begun the work, obviously, with our consultant, Beth. We're currently about 4 out of 7 items into our task 1 for contracts. So things are moving along swimmingly. And then also last night, our city council adopted an urgency ordinance. Hey, Carrie. And they got 4 out of 4 votes last night. We have 1 council member not present. And rather than going into all of the details, and I'm happy to go into details if that's of any interest, but the shocking thing for me last night was the housing advocates did not want these units to be deed restricted in any way. We did have a up to 800 square foot requirement for these units, whether it's for the 2-unit ministerial or the parcel map ministerial, allowing up to 800 square feet. And the housing advocates said, how dare you deed restrict them, which I thought was kind of interesting. But we had recommended deed restricting them in perpetuity, and they were to be for people of the low income and moderate income household categories. So lots of details in that. So happy to answer or send it out if anybody would like to see a copy of it. That concludes my comments.
Dave, did the deed restriction stick?
Yep.
Who were the housing advocates specifically? Was it an organized organization or was it individuals?
Yeah, it was the Sonoma Valley Housing Coalition. Caitlin was there, Dave Ransom was there, and a few of the other usuals. What was interesting, though, from a public policy standpoint, is we came under fire for trying to create a system or a labyrinth that precluded these housing units from being built. It's like, no, we exercised the discretion that was given to us by the state to create objective standards, and that's exactly what we did. And we wanted to make sure that these units that are built in Sonoma are not market rate driven, because we know that a 700 square foot home in Sonoma sells for just under $800,000. We check our numbers, and we know that even a 1,200 or 1,100 square foot home in Sonoma sells for $1.3 million. And we had testimony last night of a guy that said exactly just that. And the only person that we only had 2 people speak from in the community. One was Caitlin, she lives there, and also Bill Willers, an architect. All other 5 or 6 to a dozen speakers were from the Sonoma Valley area and were vehemently opposed to any ordinance. And they questioned certainly the efficacy of it being an urgency. And obviously we did belts and suspenders on that.
Thanks, Dave, for the details. I'll jump in. Lots going in Cotati. We're prioritizing our gas station ban, probably to model it after Petaluma and Sebastopol. So thank you for that work. And Heather, we're not one of the ones who are frustrated. Happy to do it. We are going to keep it very narrow focused just on fossil fuel stations. We had a couple of interesting calls over the last year about mobile fueling. We are not going to allow mobile fueling. We didn't allow it when they got a few calls, but and we'll probably also preclude on-site kind of private fleet storage as well. So, but that's where we're going to keep it to, I think. JP is going to be the lead on that. We're also, as I mentioned, working on our bike and ped master plan, but that's a year-long project and internal, so it's simmering along, but we're not currently running with it, but we'll probably start to get some traction and have a first kind of meeting in February, talk about conceptual project lists and kind of how to prioritize and parse the individual projects, et cetera. So the timing is really good with the Vision Zero and the local roadway safety plan. Our council also has prioritized urban agriculture for us, and so I'm going to be working on that. We had a random situation where we have all these policies in the general plan that support it, but our code explicitly precludes agricultural activities, and some of our even zoning districts that doesn't make sense, like low density. And then we have some large low density parcels that have historically been used for ag, and we're just running into some roadblocks there. So we're going to probably really broadly allow agriculture throughout the whole community on all types. And so that's going to start to get some traction also, because I've committed to the folks who actually need to plant their farm in the coming months. Making some traction on by right housing. We have a commitment in our housing element. We need to reduce some of our barriers. We require use permits, frankly, when we don't need to. Objective design guidelines are done. Joel was able to get those completed for us while he worked for us over the last year. He has moved on and I think is helping out Healdsburg. And what grew out of our objective design guidelines, which you guys might be interested, is a VUNERF ordinance. So we will have a VUNERF ordinance at some point. I took it to council on Tuesday and they gave me some more direction to further polish it up, but that'll be getting some traction. And then obviously, like everyone else, we're doing our housing element update, and Four Leaf is our consultant, the lead on it. And then we are able to successfully hire a part-time person. So I will allow her to introduce herself. Ada, thank you. In the coming month or so, I'll leave you some suspense with who it is, but it'll be a familiar face to many of you, I think. And I think she's going to be great for us and for the whole team. And then private development stuff, or we also are moving to construction on our wayfinding sign. So you guys will start to see some downtown kiosks and some trail kiosks with some wayfinding and interpretive information. And I think it'll be pretty well received. And then some of our private development stuff, our second dispensary in town is just issued building permits. So they're moving on their TIs. 2 warehouses, one is moving forward 50,000 square feet, and then another 30,000 is being submitted. Our hotel is going through a redesign process, but we're hoping to get that off the ground probably in March or April. Some single family subdivision stuff, and it looks like we might have our first cottage housing project. So you guys know we did a cottage housing ordinance, and I think we're going to right away get a small infill project on I think it's a 1/4 acre parcel, and they could only allow 2 units under the current zoning, but our cottage housing ordinance allows double your density, double your base density. And so they're going to do 4 single family with 2 ADUs. And so we'll get 6 units on a parcel that would otherwise just allow 2. And it's right in the middle of town. It'll be, I think, a really successful project. They have a good architect. I'll keep you guys updated on that if you're interested in kind of tracking it, because I think it'll be pretty cool. And then Katati Station, hopefully we are breathing some life back into that project. It was a 74 unit apartment project right next to the smart station, and it's just floundered. And they've kind of got a new partner, and they're bumping up the unit count to 98 more affordable homes, and then a few more market rate, and kind of reshifting the bedroom counts. And I'm hoping to be able to get some traction on that probably in February, and hopefully get it to the commission. I'll leave it at that. I hope you guys all have a great holiday, and I'll talk to you.
Hey, Noah,
yeah.
real quick, David here.
Okay.
On your gas station ban, does that include expansion of existing?
Yeah, we will not allow expansion. That's correct. And then Heather, I saw your note. I'll shoot you some code sections.
This is Jeff. I can jump in here. I think like everybody else, we're working on our general plan. We're actually in pretty good shape with we're working towards a public hearing draft of the text document for January, maybe February if we slip a little bit. And we have also started work on our housing element. And so we kind of see those 2 projects kind of merging together, where we'd probably adopt the comprehensive general plan in 2022, and then we'd follow on with adoption of the housing element later on. We're hoping we can rely on the general plan's environmental document to support the housing element adoption. So that's kind of the strategy we're playing with there. In terms of, we also have a climate change element in that, as I've discussed earlier, and in 2022 we'll probably be hiring, well, I know we'll be hiring a climate change person over in Public Works to kind of focus more on implementation. And that may be, they're even talking about possibly restructuring the Public Works Department a little bit to have a whole sustainability division. So we will see how that goes. On the private development side, University District is still building homes as fast as they possibly can. Interestingly, they're being held up by ovens, refrigerators, and dishwashers, which are stuck on container ships apparently. So that's the thing that's slowing them down right now. Willow Glen is also building, and then Sonoma is working through their approval process. They'll probably be breaking. They've already done a lot of grading out there and started putting in the infrastructure, and they'll probably be going vertical with some home construction later in 2022. So our home building is really going nuts right now, and will probably continue to for at least the next couple of years. I didn't mean Heather to take it so personally. I was just teasing her about the gas stations earlier in the week, but we have actually been getting a lot of gas station inquiries. Folks have been finding infill parcels that I did not even know that we had for potential gas stations. So there is some interest in building new gas stations out there. What else do we have? We also, we may be getting our first ADU construction in an apartment complex. So some local apartment complex may be taking advantage of those provisions in the state law that allow for up to 25% of their units to be, or additional units to be created for ADUs. And they're going to be using some of their garages that they currently have in the parking lot and convert those into ADUs. So I'll let you know how that goes, because that may be a trend if that's successful, because I can see that happening throughout the county. What else we got? We put in for home key funds like some of the other jurisdictions did, and we're waiting to hear on that. And that would be to finance a little, I think it's 60 or 70 kind of the little kind of hut type structures in a complex over by our new fire station for temporary housing. And what else I got on my list here? We have, the roundabout will probably start construction at the corner of right at our boundary with Katati there, where Commerce meets Southwest Boulevard. And that's all I have.
Thanks, Jeff.
Hi, this is Rafael. I'll go for Cloverdale. I don't have a lot for the group, but as far as the gas station ban goes, the council hasn't talked about that item yet, so I don't really have their feedback. But we did have an application. It was submitted over the summer, I think, for a new gas station, and they recently withdrew just based on cost. They were looking at for CEQA, and then also our fire department had some pretty significant comments just about safety and access to the site. It's kind of at a dead end cul-de-sac, and there's a industrial use across the street from it, and a lot of trucks already going in and out of there. And anyway, apparently the fire department was just concerned about safety, and the applicant just withdrew basically after seeing fire's comments, and I guess looking at what bill he was going to get charged for CEQA. But on top of that, we've had other, kind of like Jeff, I guess we've had other applicants recently, or I guess tire kickers, for lack of a better term, asking about potential gas station on a different piece of property. On on South Clivedale Boulevard, kind of in the south area of town. So yeah, there's definitely still interest out there for it. Other than that, yeah, just working on the housing element and general plan update and annual planning or annual progress reports. So that's it for the group. Thanks.
I can jump in real quick for Santa Rosa. We're about to release our 3 alternatives for our general plan update. So we've had the TAC meetings and the community advisory committee meetings. And so we'll start some community workshops in likely late January, early February. Let's see. We've had a lot of housing projects approved recently. 2 notable ones are 100% affordable, one on West College and one on Stony Point Road. We are revising our LEAP grant proposal. We've been in contact with HCD. We originally had received money for a specific plan for our Mendocino Avenue area, but we just couldn't we weren't going to be able to accomplish it by the year 2023, and we didn't have the additional money. So we're looking at creating this kind of housing portal for developers and also just interested community members that will provide a lot of regulatory and incentive information and kind of mapping tools so people can see where housing opportunity sites are. And we're thinking that we can incorporate or show like sites that are eligible for SB 9 and also the missing middle housing work that we're doing. So we're excited about that. We also submitted a grant or cannabis grant application to the state to help update our program. So that should be fun. And the council, let's see, recently adopted the hazard mitigation plan as well. And yeah, I think that's about it.
Thank you, Amy. I'll round out so from the county, I think there's a few jurisdictions here that may have been tracking this, but the Board of Supervisors adopted the multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan earlier this month. And then yesterday evening, we kicked off our housing advisory group. So we're starting to get out there and start talking about our housing element update and doing some of the outreach as the technical side moves forward. And then David alluding to this, we'll be quite busy at the start of the new year. So just getting preparations and planning in for a number of items we're taking to the board. The Sonoma Development Center specific plan. We anticipate publishing the draft EIR for the spring specific plan by the end of the month of January. And so just, developing some content to get that out, as well as short-term rental. That's probably the other one that I think we've provided some consistent updates on. That'll be going to Planning Commission at the end of January as well.
Hey, Brian, did I hear you correctly? You said the Springs specific plan?
Yeah, so this one, it's sort of been sitting there for a little bit. So we were able to get the consultant back on board, the work's back on track, and we're marching toward a final draft that we expect to publish before the end of January.
Cool. And that's a good thing. That's going to get everybody worked up in Sonoma.
I figure we're talking Sonoma Development Center. Talk Springs too.
It's called job security for me. Thank you. Hey, one last question, Brian. Is there an update on your 59 rezones?
Yeah, that's sort of being rolled into taking a little bit of a different approach where the rezoning effort will just be sort of wrapped into the housing element as a whole. So we're initially, I think 2 years ago, we sort of had them as like a 1A, 1B approach, and now it's just we're combining them. So there's nothing out there at the moment. We're still working on the comments from the draft.
Have you as staff withdrawn some of those that were recommended to be withdrawn out of the 59, or are you just taking the whole bundle of 59 and just plugging that in?
No, it was always up to 59. We're still going through the analysis of what the ultimate number is that we recommend.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
Yeah. Ada.
For me to do some updates?
Please.
Just really quickly, I guess 3 things. One, I wrote it in the chat, but we're trying to collect photos for, we're sending out a professional photographer to take photos of examples of different types of missing middle housing. So Noah, your announcement about the cottage homes was really exciting, but if there are any kind of in the works or any that are already built that you have good examples of in your community, they could be older or newer. We're wanting to have those provided so that when you all do kind of these presentations to your councils, there's a bank of photos of different types of housing that you can call upon. And I really want to make sure we have North Bay examples, because we just need, your council needs to see things that look and feel like your community, right? So we want to have that mix. And I think your stuff will be a contribution to the broader regional conversation anyway. So if you have any, just a couple, addresses that really stand out to you that you think are great examples of like what you'd like to see more of, if there is going to be more density in the single family home neighborhoods, just shoot me some addresses. I think the planning collaboratives are pushing that too. So just a reminder of that. We have I think there's a December 22nd deadline for Symbium. And just wanted to encourage folks to think about it. Symbium Plan Check is kind of an online resource. It really, I've talked to San Francisco city staff that had Symbium implemented for a certain portion of their work. And it really is, it doesn't take a lot of staff capacity to integrate the system. So I think that's a part where we're seeing people, everyone's overwhelmed. You got other things to work on. Even if you get your applications in, one, if you don't want it, fine, you can, not take it. There's only 10 licenses we're approving. And 2, it can get started later on in the year. It's just, I think we're trying to get folks. So it's a way to really help streamline checking kind of what's required for certain, when someone comes in for a plan and the plan check system. So there's a video on our website. It works better for jurisdictions that are doing a little more infill housing and not greenfield. So like the Antiochs and Pittsburghs that are doing a lot of greenfield development, that's not really the kinds of jurisdictions it'll work for. Works better for smaller jurisdictions that don't have a lot of staff capacity, or if you have staff turnover, it reduces training time. So just want to encourage folks to think about that. And there was one other one. What was it? Now I forgot it. Oh, okay. So, and I'll bring this up in the next the planning collaborative meeting, but we're starting to think about the REAP 2.0 funding and kind of understanding how slow we move. If there's some stuff you all are thinking about that you're going to need to take on 2 years from now, it would be great to know, just shoot me a note, like however random it is, because we're starting to plan for that now. And I'd love to be able to experience doing something on a timely basis. And that, so that would be the turnaround time. So if we could start thinking about it now and building in the funding to help us help you for what you guys are thinking about needing to do around the implementation of your housing elements or kind of that kind of TA, it would be great to hear from you, because we're going to start programming that in January. So that's it. Thanks a lot. And yes, Rena tonight.
Are you going?
Absolutely not. And there aren't changes to your numbers, right? I think generally we're seeing that there aren't going to be significant changes. So that feels, it's not like there's going to be a random factor happening.
Ada, are they shifted to like an in-person for this one?
I I can't remember if it is in person or not. What I do remember, I mean, I think the challenges were more around just making sure everything got, the legal process of getting it all together is what I was just talking to Gillian yesterday afternoon. So she's bound there. I didn't find out about the meeting at all, actually. Yeah, and I'm working on, just to let you all know, for your housing elements, you all will have to have some component around farm worker housing. And Jane Riley, Kathy, and I are all working on trying to get some policy pieces together for you all in January that you can just use as a menu. But HCD has made really, really clear that everybody will have to more substantially address farm worker housing than they have in the past. And their housing elements, anywhere you are, not specific to you. So we're doing a regional piece, but we'll try to have some write-ups that are pretty simple, like a 10-pager, it's not gonna be long, and a little menu. We've got the survey of policies throughout the state. So we're gonna try to put something together for you by January.
Thanks, Ada. That leaves for the roundtable SCTA and Caltrans. If there's any updates there.
I have no significant updates on my end.
Orlando. All right, I think that, oh, Janet.
I was just going to say, we had our December board meeting this last Monday. Of interest to you may be the PDA investment growth strategy, which is essentially a technical document update that we talked to you about last month, I believe. No big changes there. However, these kinds of conversations at our board lead our board members to want to talk about housing even more. So I'll be bringing this up next time we meet about how we might talk to our board about housing, find out more clearly exactly what they want, how they want to be involved in housing. We've just, discussed with them that we are in support of the planners. We provide data, analyze data, and have these meetings. But if there's more that you think we can do or should do, I'm open to hearing about it. We will not be meeting in January, so we have till February to sort of talk about this a little bit more.
Janet, when you say we, is that the SCTA board or this collective we here?
Us, until I reconvene with our board. Because I'm not sure they know what they want yet either.
You know, maybe this is an Ada question, the housing collaborative with some of their outreach. And I wonder if maybe that's already planned for SCTA board or consideration.
I think you all have the ability to direct the collaborative work. So that's something that you might want to make one of the bodies of work, right? And there's some strategizing. So that's a good conversation for the next collaborative meeting.
Thanks, Janet. Heather, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I have a quick question of Noah. Just skimming through your cottage housing ordinance in the background. So in Petaluma, when we've had people come forward with that kind of concept of multiple smaller houses kind of clustered around a common space, we've done it through like creation of a residential PUD development to kind of, get around some of the regulations. So the cottage ordinance that you adopted, is the primary difference would be that it allows you to increase density over what's allowed otherwise?
Yeah, I would say absolutely. So Katati made the decision to get rid of our PUD or PD allowances because there was some frustration that it was like a get out of jail free. So we actually don't have that mechanism in our code.
So we needed
that. Something.
Yeah.
And then it's super prescriptive if you see like the amount of open space and all that. So we gave some prescribed standards that would give the community comfort that it wasn't the get out of jail free.
Yeah, and yours requires going to council.
It's just in our code every every subdivision goes to council, and so
Right.
it's just a small town thing.
Because I'm thinking also, well, our code requires subdivisions to go to council too. But if they weren't individually owned, if they were rentals, let's say, I'm thinking then you could do it through planning commission theoretically, as opposed to going to council, which would be a shorter process than the PUD adoption, which is a zoning.
Yeah,
change.
and that was the other thing. So we were originally going to have a use permit be the mechanism. And because the use permit grants all these other kind of legal rights that are tied to use permits, our attorney advised us to come up with something unique. And so we just have this cottage housing development plan is essentially how you get all the flexibility and accommodation by getting that approved. And we created a unique application for it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And with your objective design standards, they're much longer, so I haven't been able to scroll through them yet. Did you address SB 9 at all?
We got it done right before.
Okay.
So we're going to go back and amend.
Has anybody adopted anything to address SB 9? No? Okay, thank you.
You
So
lost
we're-
me on that one, Heather. SB 9.
Where you can ministerially divide a residential lot into two, and you can put 2 units on each lot, and like the minimum size is something like 1,500 square foot lots with 2 units on each lot, and it's all ministerial. So if you don't have any sort of objective design standards about whether it's lot creation or the units, that's what I'm concerned about.
Earlier, I had said that the city of Sonoma last night adopted an urgency ordinance relating to SB 9. So the answer is 1,200 square feet, but that's another story for another day. But yeah, we have an urgency ordinance that goes over all of those specifics.
Do you have design guidelines, Dave?
No, we did not do design. We wanted to keep that separate.
So I'm sorry, what was the urgency ordinance then if it's adopted at the state level and we have to?
So for example, the SB 9 only has very minimalistic objective design standards, or excuse me, objective standards. It allows you to do subdivision objective, design objective, and zoning objective. We did everything except for design.
Okay.
So if you were to read our ordinance, it's online. You can see it at our council meeting last night. We did various things. For example, we banned flag lots. We talked about a maximum height for a 1-story. We talked about plate height. We talked about a lot of things. And again, one of the things that I mentioned previously was that we put a deed restriction on all of the resultant units. And so, yeah, there's a bunch of stuff there rather than take up everybody's time. I'm happy to have you take a look at it online. If you have any questions, I'm happy to
Okay.
help you. We
Thank
probably
you.
spent upwards of 40 hours this last couple of weeks on it.
And just to let folks know, we've started working with Opticos on a little bit of a backstop for the SB 9 odds. Obviously, it won't be done by January, but I think the approach we're going to have is to do an overlay so that people would, like, if they chose to apply through SB 9, it would kind of kick in this overlay. So it won't be specific what every jurisdiction needs, but at least it'll be a backstop until you have the chance to kind of take that farther. So we're just.
Ada, did Barb's model ordinance get put on the website yet? You know?
I thought it was supposed to have gone up last week.
It very well could have. I haven't looked at it. We're one of her clients, or she's one of our clients. I don't know how you would say it, but we got a sneak peek before it went public. But obviously we didn't use that model. We crafted our own, but that really did help. The FAQs also helped as well. One of the main things that I took from the FAQs, and it's all over SB 9 about the intent on the Legislative Council's Digest, the fact that if you've got a multifamily zone that's got higher density in it, then SB 9 doesn't apply. The whole point of SB 9 was to take single family zones and add density to that. So into a multifamily district, it didn't make any sense. But I mean, just intuitively, I just never thought of that. So, oh yeah, even though you could do single family homes in the multifamily zone, SB 9 does not apply. And that was a great help.
I'll make sure to send the link to all you guys. So I'll find the facts and the and get a link out.
Thank you.
Data. All right, Janet, did you cover was part of your update the 6B SCTA board agenda and planning activities?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. And then I don't see Jane at all. Ada, was there any other additional updates you wanted to provide for 6C, housing element and Napa Sonoma collaborative?
Nope, we're good.
Hey, Ada, on that point, specifically Brian and Ada, we're looking to create a housing element update website. So if anybody's got something like that, or you've got a model or something like that, I know the collaborative is working on that. I think that'd be a great thing for all of our small cities to try to borrow from one another.
Yeah, Dave, reach out because the collaborative's like full steam ahead.
Well, we have Wendy on our staff participating in that, and she's asked me some questions this week. And
Okay, perfect. The timing, it should be like January. We should have something for you that's pretty usable.
Thank you.
And relatively cheap, I would think, cost-wise. So. All right, let me turn it over to any public comments that might be out there. Okay. Seeing none, I will, let's see. I think that's it. So that brings us to getting a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn and wish everybody a happy holidays.
All right, thanks everyone.
Thank you, Brian, for
Take
being
care.
a great chair.
Thank you, everyone.
Yep, bye.